Now, welcome to another weekend ramble, where today we're going to discuss the technology of Star Wars, and I mean in-universe.
Yes, specifically the stuff we saw in Andor, comparing it to what we know of the technology from as much sources of canon as we have available.
Well, that and a few other things. And to be clear before going into this isn't like a complaint. I don't want to make it sound like I'm angry about these sort of things.
It's more of a query.
It's an interesting discussion, I think. So if we bring up things like, oh, I don't really get or like how that works, this is all in good fun, right? We're trying to have a fun discussion here. So,
and if you have any ideas as to how this technology works or how you interpret what they're saying, let us know in the
by all
comments.
means,
We're always open to continuing the conversation and maybe learning something new.
Yeah, the comments are just a continuation of the video, in our opinion. So one of the things that is kind of a problem for Star Wars, and I put that in kind of quotations, is it was originally made, obviously, in 1977, when technology looked a lot different than it does today, of course. And so it's very tricky to have a quote-unquote futuristic society, which Star Wars is, even though it's set in the distant past. It's very hard to have a futuristic society based on something you wrote 45 years ago, because we have things like the internet, for example, which, yes, there is like the HoloNet in Star Wars, but there are other things in our world that we've kind of taken for granted in our common technology, if you will, that they don't seem to have in Star Wars.
Yes. One thing I know that we were talking about were chain codes and what
identification, they are. Things like that.
I mean, we compare them to something like a driver's license / social security number.
Which is what I think they kind of are.
We saw them in Bad Batch, is when we saw them, like...
Implemented,
because you had to exchange your old Republic currency for galactic credits, and you were issued a chain card.
Chain code.
Sorry, chain code.
Chain code card.
But it was a card.
Yeah.
To make the long story short, they had to get these presented to Imperial officers, had your chain codes ready, you presented them, they looked like little credit card, driver's license type size things. You presented them, and it was your identification. Then we move into a show like The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian is very strange with the fobs, isn't it? Exactly
how
how
do the fobs work.
And they seem to be attached to the chain codes.
Mm-hmm. How does the tracking fob work attached to a chain code if the subject, let's say in this case a small green individual, isn't card carrying?
No, he's not card carrying, yet it made it seem like he could track him with the fob through the chain code.
If you get worried about having a bounty hunter sent on you, all you do is throw away your ID and you're fine.
Yeah,
right?
And yet at the same time, they only had the last 4 digits of the chain code, which apparently identified his age. So it almost seems like the last 4 digits are like your date of birth, essentially.
Most likely, I mean, if that's how they identify your age, because
maybe your
of
year
state of birth.
at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Your galactic year, whatever. You know what I mean,
Yes. And then how did this all apply in Andor?
Well, it's strange in Andor because Andor obviously gets arrested at one point as
Keef Karga.
Keef Karga, yeah. I want to say Grief Karga. So
they probably want you to think that.
Yeah, so that's why I hesitate, because I'm like, it's like Grief? Grief?
Keef.
Yes. So
Keef Karga.
Not Grief Karga, but Keef Karga. They don't seem to put this together that he is a previous felon, essentially.
Right.
I mean, if you would get arrested,
he's already got a rap sheet.
Yeah, so if you would get arrested in today's world, they're gonna fingerprint you. They're gonna match something up and realize, okay, you're lying, that you're not this person.
Because in episode 2, when they were hunting for him, after they got the tip from Tim, they looked him up in the database, and out popped Cassian Andor. Here's his information. Here's the rap sheet of things he's done. Here's an image of him when he was arrested, as if they took a mugshot.
Yeah, they do have some, we have, of course, like face matching technology, facial recognition technology, I should say. And so, part of the problem, and again, I put that in quotations. We're having a fun discussion here. Don't get all upset. Part of the problem is, why didn't they ever put together? Because we were trying to think, is there any nitpicky things we could do with that? Or are there any things that don't really make sense in here just for fun? And I know that's not a really fun thing for a lot of people to do, to pick apart something they love. But we were like, well, it doesn't really make sense, does it?
That's really the only thing that keeps sticking out to me is he got arrested.
And
they didn't figure out that he had a fake identity.
Yes, which he probably
paid
bought
for with the money, I'm sure. But, I mean, it's one thing fooling everyday people or whoever you're buying that or renting that place from, but it's another thing fooling the Imperial prison system.
Yeah.
They have, as we saw with Cyril, rooms full of people whose job is just to analyze and stare at data all day.
Yeah,
but they never matched this up when they took a mugshot. Nothing went off.
No fingerprints, no DNA match, no...
Which feels like something that the Empire would do because they would be thorough.
Yeah, they would be extremely... You think these things would just... They exist in our world. Again, technology that is primitive yet in some way more advanced than Star Wars, which is that great quandary of the two, trying to rectify, well, what do they have in Star Wars that we don't have here, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But it just feels like, again, if you had to find something to kind of question, it would be, did they not have fingerprints? Did they not have like DNA? How does that chain code work? What about facial recognition? They never put the two together?
Let's just say, Deidre knew the name Cassian Andor.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the ISB put out some sort of, like, APB we're looking for if you happen to arrest, here's the information, here's his image, but yet no one in the prison system was like, hey, we already got him.
Yeah. It just feels...
It feels like a little bit of a hole.
It does. That would be
a weird convenience, like a lapse almost in technology, because I feel like that's something they should have been able to figure out, that they had him in custody.
Yeah. It feels like the chain codes are supposed to kind of... what's the point of a chain code if they're so easy to kind of subvert, right?
Absolutely.
And we see that bounty hunters kind of rely on them. So if you're a criminal and it's as easy as like doing something with your chain code or getting a different card or just claiming to be someone else, you would think bounty hunting would be a much more complicated profession.
Absolutely.
Which it is. I'm not saying it's not, right? It's not an easy job, but if you can't rely on the chain code and all these things, then how do you confirm?
All they had to do was hire a bounty hunter, give him a fob, and they should be able to track down Andor in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And we do exist in a galaxy where you can get, we have modders who can get new stomachs and all sorts of things. So I'm assuming changing your fingerprints, changing, facial recognition. I'm assuming these things are not impossible to do in this galaxy.
Right, but how many connections does Cassian have to the people who could do that?
Well, he did have a lot of money.
That's true, but you're going to get in trouble if you're just walking around going, do you know anyone who can
change my fingerprints,
change my identity
facial structure?
and everything?
Yeah. No, but it is weird. Like I said, it's the strangest thing about Star Wars is that we know it's a futuristic galaxy, yet some of their technology is so backwards, which you could come up with things in story. Again, I'm not complaining, but it's a difficult thing to write in Star Wars because you can't just we have cell phones in the real world. They have communicators, yes, but not... their communicators are inferior to our average cell phone, you could say. And yet they have spaceships that can, travel in hyperspace and go across the galaxy, where we obviously don't.
Yeah, this was just some weird conversation we started having yesterday, and we're like, maybe we should stop having it because
it's a good weekend ramble.
This is an interesting conversation. Other people might have some opinions and weigh in, and maybe you have thought of the solution to this that we have not, and I would love to have someone in the comments tell us your thoughts on all this. It's very odd that the prison system didn't report to figure out that they had somebody the ISB was looking for as a person of interest.
Yeah, because I'm just saying, in the real world, if you get arrested and you have a previous record, you're not getting around that, right? They're going to figure out who you are.
They're going to figure out you had a fake identity, no matter how good you think that ID was.
Yeah.
They'll take your fingerprints and go, you're not who you say you are.
Exactly.
Even if they don't figure out immediately who you are, they'll know you're not who you say you are.
Yes, that you didn't exist. We don't know what, Andor, Cassian, whatever you want to call him, what he did to kind of build that identity. I'm assuming it's more than he just took on the name. It could be the identity of another person, that it's all, someone that was killed or died and that no one ever knew that, and he kind of switched. And there's a lot of explanations, right? But still, you think...
Or he just thought no one was coming for him and he didn't do it really in-depth. He was going to escape with his mom. He didn't think he was in trouble for the Aldhani thing. He only knew they were looking for him for, on Ferrix.
Yeah. No, I think these are interesting questions. And again, I'm not saying they bother me. I'm not saying they're problems, but they're fun to try to figure out how this all works.
It could just simply be an easy explanation like, there are so many people in prison, they don't have time to do in-depth checks. So they don't care because they just want to arrest people and punish them.
Yeah, that was my easiest explanation.
That is the easiest explanation.
They're putting people, they don't care about who you really are. They got you in prison. They know you're not getting out of there. So who cares if you're have a fake ID?
They don't care. Yeah. They just want your body in prison under whatever name you are. And that might just be the simplest solution to the quandary. I just can't help but think the Empire might be a little more thorough. Yeah, or you could say it's just the bureaucracy, right? It's the person on the ground. They're doing how many trials per day? He's arrested, the next day he's sentenced. So it's not like there's this thorough investigation. As you said, they're just throwing people in prison. So it could be as simple as an oversight or somebody not doing their job. Especially after Aldhani, when the arrest rate seemed to skyrocket. Exactly. So again, there are explanations, but I do find it curious how chain codes work, how key fobs work. We don't have a solid explanation on these things. We can make assumptions, but it's a fun discussion. I think so too.
Especially in the wake of Andor, when you're like, well, they had him under their nose the whole time, which is
The whole
kind of
time.
ironic, right? It's good for the story, but then you step back and you're like, well, how does this one work? Everything else in this show seems to be pretty much airtight, but this is the one thing that I'm like, how did they never figure that out?
You had him the whole time.
You did. But again, makes for a good story.
Wasting time and resources watching all the people on Ferrix when they
everybody.
have
They have like a
You
whole
had what you
garrison
needed.
stationed on Ferrix, basically to watch for him, but they have him in a prison making Death Star parts the whole time. Again, good story, but also a good conversation as to how it all works. Anyway, that is all we got for you this time. So now it is your turn to have your say in this one. How do you think chain codes work? Do you think it's weird that they didn't figure out Andor was in their custody the whole time? Whatever you want to talk about in terms of this conversation, leave it in the comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.